For as long as I can remember playing games on PC, I have been taking screenshots as I play. At the time of writing, my collection is 17,000 screenshots strong, taking up about 44 gigabytes of space. It dates back to 2012, with the oldest stuff in there being preserved screenshots of the world and cinematics of Alan Wake, one of my favorite games of all time. It was the ability to immediately capture and then return to the cinematography of games that kind of got me into the idea of screenshotting in the first place. When I saw a scene that had been carefully composed and that I really had an appreciation for, I wanted to capture that right away. Photography and cinematography are areas that I've long held interests in. The art of capturing a moment, whether that's real or simulated, is something that has rapidly become more accessible to us in our daily lives. When you think about how we have phones everywhere, we have cameras in all of those phones, and so a lot of people who weren't previously able to take photos and share them with family and friends now are. This advance has come to gaming just as much as it has with our everyday lives. The power of the current console generation, which is the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 at the time of writing, has enabled developers to create photo modes. We saw a few of these on the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 as well, but not nearly as much as we have on this current generation. These modes enable players to pause a moment in time, manipulate a camera, add effects like depth of field, add color filters, add frames, and then easily share all of these photos with the world. In virtually any game that has a photo mode, even games I don't ultimately enjoy, like 2014's Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor, I can still spend hours with these sorts of modes. Photo modes allow for novice and professional photographers to be on kind of a level ground. They have access to the same suite of tools, which does allow them to manipulate a camera and manipulate effects, all within incredible digital landscapes. When we talk about photography in real life, we're talking about capturing a specific moment in time from a specific angle and position with specific settings on the camera, either set up by hand or using automatic processes. The limitations and requirements of taking a photo in real life, and the art of capturing those specific moments, it's deliberate and it's incidental. What happens then if we remove those limits? What happens if we allow people to effectively freeze time, to manipulate a camera freely, manipulate all of the associated settings, and capture the moment in really intimate detail? What happens when those moments are primarily focused on violence? In some games, violence is your only real interaction with the world. If we take Tom Clancy's The Division, for example, your primary options as you move through the world are talk and shoot. And talk isn't a viable option when you think about most of the people in the world of The Division. It's built for violence first, and talking second. This sort of focus is very singular, and it's something of a concern when we want to talk about the art of photography within the context of video games. A very large portion of video games, particularly those in the big budget AAA sector, are all focused on violence first. They are built around, and have the most time put into, their combat systems. When we add a photo mode into the mix, the result is seemingly inevitable. Rather than the photo mode being a set of tools to capture kind of incidental and unique moments, it has this potential to alter how we think about how we interact with the world, whether that's through combat or through other means. Because in order to get certain spectacular photos, we have to ask the question of what would make the best photo. Once you know that a photo mode is in a game, that question can become kind of buried in the back of your mind. So as you go through the game, you then become aware of, oh, I can do this really cool thing in combat. I can do this really cool thing over here. If I act in a certain way, I can create spectacle, and then I can capture that spectacle. The results of this work can really look spectacular, but it's kind of a cold, cruel way to approach playing a video game. you are using combat and violence as a preface to a photo, let's actually take a look at an example that I took from Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor. As I played, I distinctly remember trying to set up attacks and moments based on a certain chain of events. And one of those chains ultimately created this photo. And I've got a little recreation that I did here as well, that I did while I was shooting for this video. In order to get this picture, I had to find a group of Uruk by a fire, sneak up, use an ability I had which would make the fire explode when shot, and then turn myself around because cool guys don't look at explosions. The timing had to be just so that I was partway out of the wraith form while the aftermath of my actions ensued behind me. A lot of consideration went into that shot and the art of making it just so. But it was ultimately a consideration of how to make violence look cool. I felt weird, realizing that I had done this months and months later. I had done it without any sort of critical examination of why. I was just in pursuit of that one killer shot. This is the dark side of the power of photo modes. This is where it can unconsciously shift play, and it can do so in such a way that you end up seeking out the spectacular and creating these chains of violent events specifically with the intent of capturing them. So ask yourself something here. How many skeletons lie in your screenshot folder? How often have you done the same thing without thinking? Could you do better in the future? I want to be very clear, by the way, and weed out any commenters who tuned out the second I started talking about violence in video games. This is not a condemnation of violence in video games or violent video games at all. Rather, this is a side effect of the decision to place violence at the core of a video game. When we place the focus of a game on violence, then the natural evolution of someone using a photo mode, or even simply screenshotting that game, is going to be producing images that are, in one way or another, caked in violence. When we talk about video game screenshots in general, it's not that uncommon to see a dead body somewhere in the frame, and that's a sight that would be horrific to someone who was detached from what a video game is. This isn't a phenomenon that's exclusive to games where we can pause and manipulate a camera and add effects. It's not exclusive to photo modes. It is something that can happen in more casual capture as well. Chris Plant, writing for The Verge, found himself confronting this as he worked through his game screenshots. Quote, "One recurring theme was a bit jarring. My gallery is stuffed with photos of virtual dead bodies, like rigid tuna packed into a can. The oldest shot in the gallery is a cop unloading around into the head of GTA 4's protagonist Niko Bellic, and the newest, a low-poly soldier taking a bullet to the chest." Link to the original article in the down there bit. When it comes to photo modes, we as players can actually think about how do we make violence look cool, in much the same way that game developers do. At some point in development, decisions need to be made about how to make violence look and feel cool to the audience of the developer, the player. As a photographer operating within the constraints of those same games, we then are faced with much the same question. We might be thinking about how we present violence to our audiences, whether that's some friends, or maybe the general public if you're sharing through something like Twitter, or just preserving it for ourselves. When we go back and talk about photography in general, the entire art form is something of a value judgment. What do we feel is worth preserving and sharing? When you look at Instagram or Facebook, for example, you'll likely see presentations of the mundane. People's pets, the food they eat, everyday occurrences. These things are meaningful in some way to the photographer, even though they may be mundane, and so they're worth preserving. In contrast, seeing my gallery from Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor, it's clear that what I took away from it was not the beauty that could be found within Mordor, limited as it was, but rather the brutality that shaped the core of it. The screenshots I took fixate on that brutality, with rare breaks to show environments or characters that I found interesting. As the player, violence was ultimately what was most meaningful from that game, and it was what ended up being preserved as such. It was the only thing I could take away from it. I feel like that speaks volumes about other aspects of that game as well, that the only thing I felt was worth preserving from it was brutality. In other games, different takeaways do make themselves apparent. If we look at Assassin's Creed Odyssey, for example, my screenshots from this reflect massive scope and scale. There's these grand landscapes, historical landmarks, and amazing views peppered throughout the gallery. If we look at Forza Horizon 3, though not a violent game, you can see the takeaway there. You can see the spectacle of the Horizon Festival. You can see exciting moments of wheel-to-wheel action and the design of some pretty incredible machinery. Everyone's takeaway from any given game is going to be very different. You may be looking through your screenshot folder of Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor now and find you've preserved a lot more beauty from that game. And that was what you took away. Maybe you took away shots of your nemesises going about their business. Your takeaway will always be different. Maybe next time that you open a photo mode or you go to take a screenshot, ask yourself, what do I really feel is worth preserving here? Thanks very much for watching this video. If you haven't already, remember to like this video, maybe leave a comment, let me know what you think. You can also subscribe to find out about new videos as they are released. Maybe ring the bell if you would like. This video actually reflects the launch of my Patreon campaign. I now have a Patreon available at patreon.com/tealqt. Supporters can get access to early copies of video essays like this one. They can also get access to scripts, and eventually we'd like to do some stuff like Patreon exclusive live streams, which will be done here on YouTube. We'd like to get some capture hardware so I can more easily capture from my PlayStation 4 for everybody to watch streams there, and that's all going to be made possible through Patreon. So if you'd like to support it month to month, you can go to patreon.com/TIELQT. You can also visit my website at tielqt.com, that's tealqt.com, and that will take you to all of my social media. There's a link to Discord, there's a link to my live streams on Mixer, there is a link to my Twitter. It's all right there. A special thank you to @TheQueerSteer and @ApogeeSys on Twitter for assisting me with editing the script. They were huge helps, and they both really helped me laser focus my vision for this piece. It's my first time doing a video essay, so I was kind of nervous coming into this. And that's it. Thank you again for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do so. It really means a lot to me. I hope you've enjoyed this essay, and I hope it's given you something to think about.